Hey, and welcome to this section of your 30 days of code challenge brought to you by Codeflex. Today, I will be introducing you to CSS Flexbox and I'll tell us one or two things about about CSS property, right? So, what is CSS Flexbox? As CSS Flexbox coined from flexible box model is a model that allows developers layer their web pages with ease, right? What that means is CSS Flexbox allows layering out easy for developers, right? It makes layering out of web pages very easy for developers. And um, how do we start using CSS Flexbox? CSS Flexbox is used by just displaying our container, giving a display property to our container and giving it a value of flex, right? So when we are using uh, CSS Flex, one thing we should put in mind is we are working on a container and this container contains items. So whenever we display a particular container flex, it is all its item becomes a flex item and the container itself becomes a flex container, right? Just understand the little grammar, right? So, and also another very important thing to understand is this: whenever you display a container flex, by default, by default, the direction of the flex is row, unless you want to turn it to become vertical. Now, this is the difference between flex and other layering out properties, right? Flex is one direction. That means it can only be one direction at a particular time. It's either it's row or is column. It's either is horizontal or is vertical, right? It can only be one at the same time. So, and I'm telling you now that by default is on the row. Now, when your flex container is display flex, when your flex container is on row, the main axis is horizontal, then the cross axis is vertical. And when you decide to now turn your flex direction to column, your main axis becomes column, right? Because you have turned it to column, your main axis becomes column and your cross axis becomes row. This is because our cross axis and our main axis are sorry are always perpendicular to each other, right? So that's why they always work like that. Now let's look at how it's going to look at on the default, like when we display a container flex, right? And I say by default is this is direction is going to be row. Now I will come here and create another section, and this section I want to give it a class name of box 6 container, right? So I create that and I want to, inside of this place I want to add boxes, right? I want to create divs with class name of boxes. I need to space them and I want it to be 3. I want this one to be box 1, right? And I want to have 3 of it, right? The second one should be 2 and the third one 3. So we have 3 boxes. Now I want to select this container. I want to apply, this is one new thing we are going to see, right? In other displays, when we display block, we are working with the element that we are applying the display property to, right? When we are also working with inline, when we are talking of inline, we are working with the same element that we are applying the property to. But when we are talking of flex, when we are displaying a particular element flex, we are telling that element how it should display its items, how it should lay out its items, not exactly itself. So that is why when you apply properties of Flex to a container, you are not seeing anything happening to the container. Instead, you are seeing something happening to the items of that container. Now, if you look at this section that I created, the section that I gave a class name of boxes container, you'll see that it's containing three items, right? Which are divs. By default, divs are block element, and that is why you see that on the screen they are on top of each other because, like I said, block elements will always take a full line, right? They are going to take a full row, complete row, right? That's why they are block element. So let's come to our CSS and first of all see our box, select our box and give it a border of 1 px solid orange, right? Now this is what I mean when I say it will always take a full row. A block element will take a full row. That is the reason why the next element is going to have to go to the next line because there is no space for you in that row. Even if I decide to give it a shorter width, is still going to occupy that row. It's still not going to allow any other element chance it and take that row unless I state otherwise. These are things we can do with ease when we are working with Flexbox, right? Um, now I want to select my container, the container that contain the boxes, right? And this is the container. Right. Now I want to display it flex and I say when you display a container, you see I want to actually layer my boxes. The box that's the items that are inside this container. I want to layer them out. But I am passing that instruction to their parent, right? So this is what I was trying to explain. So I'm coming to the parent and say display flex and you see what happens to their children. They lay side by side on horizontal axis. So let me quickly also give this a border of 1 px solid red so that we can be seeing it. Also make sure that the borders are not overlapping by giving it padding of let's say 1 rem, right? Too big. Let me give it okay 0.5 rem. Okay, this is better. Now you can see that. Let me also give it a gap. Let me space them from each other with 10 px. Okay, so now you see what I'm doing. I'm working in the container, and the container is telling the children how they should layer out. This is what I was trying to explain previously, right? Now, when you display an element flex, like I said, the element becomes a flex item, and whatever it contains becomes, sorry, the element becomes a flex container, and whatever it contains becomes a flex item, right? Simple as that. And like I said, by default, when you display an element flex, by default, the flex direction is row. And that is why you see that immediately I display a flex, every of the item layer out on the horizontal axis, which is row, right? So the flex direction is row. So if I come here and decide to give it a flex direction of row, it's not going to make any difference because that is the default, right? But I can change this to column and you see that they are now layering on top of each other again, right? Okay, so then I can also say, okay, I don't want you to now. Okay, before I say that, Now, when an element is displayed flex and by default is row, or when the flex direction of an element is row, by default the start point is from the left and the end point is from the right, unless I reverse it. Because I can also say, okay, now that is why your elements, your flex container items are going to align to the left because that is the start point of that flex container, right? That is why you see that they are right here, they are at the left. Left is start by default. When your flex direction is row, by default start point is left and end point is right. Unless I change it, unless I reverse it. So I can say flex direction should be row, it should be row, but this time around it should be reversed. Now see what's going to happen. You see that everything has jumped to the right. What has just happened is I have said that, okay, I want my flex direction to still be row, right? But I want the start point to be right instead of the default left. I want start point to be right and end point to be left. And that is why you see that everything changes, right? So what else can we quickly talk about? Okay, let's quickly look at some of the flex properties that you will always be using most of the time. Just get familiarized with it. And also, I want to tell you that in as much as flex is complex, flex properties are easy to understand. Just use them. By the time you use them two, three, four times, you will understand how to work, how they work, and you will master it. As simple as that. There's no special logic, right? So the first one we'll look at is justify content. Now, like I said, when your flex direction is justify content works with the main axis. When your item is when your flex direction is row, your main axis is row. Take note of that. Main. If it is row, main is row and crosses vertical is column. If it is column, main is column. Wherever your direction is, that is where your main axis is. Just note that. Wherever your direction is, that is where your main axis is. So now because our direction is on the row, our main axis is on the row. So justify content will always work on the main axis. That is on the direction, on the axis where our flex direction is, right? So that is why when I say I want to justify content starts, I mean all the content of this container should align themselves to the start point. And you know that by default, our start point is left, right? So that's why they are here. I can decide to say, okay, they should go to end. And you see that they jump to end, right? Everything on where? On the main axis. Justify content is working on the main axis. Does not have anything to do with vertical axis. So I can also say I want it to be at the center. Sorry, I want it to be at the center. You see it at the center. So these are some of flex property that you are going to be using very, very, very often. Now, also, if I increase the height, if I say I want to give my container a height of, let's say, 5 rem. Now you are going to see that my container is having a height of 5 rem, right? And justify content has put everything in the center, right? And you can also see that my boxes are stretching by default to fill the height. They are filling the height by default, right? That is default. By default, the flex grow is it the flex? Yeah, flex grow is one and flex shrink is zero. No, shrink is zero and grow is one, right? So by default, this is how it's going to behave. Then what if I want my item to be at the center vertically? Because what I work with is horizontal, right? And I say justify content work with horizontal. Then what work with vertical? That is the align items. So if I come here now and align my items to say start, sorry, right? You see my items, they are now on top. I am now working on vertical axis. Why am I working on vertical axis? Because my main axis is row. And the property that work with row is justify content. Meanwhile, my align items will work with what? With column. If my justify content is working with column, my align item is going to work with what? With row. Now, the same thing I did there, I can also say it should come to center and it will be centered. And I can also say it should go to end and it will go to end. So just like that. But let's look at how things are going to play out when I turn it to be when I turn the flex direction to be column, flex direction, I want it to be column. Let's see what's going to happen, right? You see that when I say my flex direction should be column, at this point, align item is going to be working on the horizontal axis because the main axis is now column, is now vertical, right? So justify content will always work along the main axis. So now the main axis is now vertical. So justify content is now working vertically and align item is now working horizontally. That is why my align item is end and my items have moved to the end. So if I change it to center, they will move to where? To the center. And if I say start, they will move to the start horizontally because my direction has changed. The same thing with justify content. Now if I say start, right? You see they are going to there's not enough space anyway for them to really work the way we want it to work. But just know that this time around, my justify content is going to be working vertically. Justify content is always working with the main axis, and the main axis is always on the direction of your flex. If my flex is on horizontal axis, my main axis is on horizontal axis. If my flex is on column, is on vertical, my main axis is vertical, which is column. If my direction is row, my main axis is row. If my direction is column, my main axis is column. If my main axis is column, my justify content is going to work on the column. If my main axis is on the row, justify content is going to work on the row, right? So that is that about introduction to CSS Flex. Um, I before I go, I want you whenever you get this video, try to like, share, and comment. Right, it's very important. Okay, so thank you for being a part of today's section. I will see you again in the next section. Bye.